Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode. Today I have Ben and Colin with me, and they are two filmmakers who have gone and made 12 short films in 12 months. Welcome to the show, and we want to hear what made you guys do this considerably insane thing.
For sure. So yeah, I guess we could start at when Colin and I first met. Part of how we ended up on this show was I saw the episode you did with Chris Wiley on the Hajira frequency.
Yep.
So I was actually the first assistant director on that film,
Excellent.
and Colin was the first camera assistant.
Very nice.
So that's how we kind of first met, and we started working together from there. So we worked together at my company, Hot Shoe Productions, kind of doing more corporate video stuff, and then towards the end of the year, we went to Digi60. We saw a bunch of movies. We both had movies in it that we'd done separately, and we kind of had a discussion of like, man, I really want to like step up our game and make even better movies. And then I was like, hey, what if we made one short film every month for the whole year? And for some reason, Colin agreed to it. And then I talked to like four people at Digi60 about it. I was like, we're going to do this now. And he was like, well, I guess we can't back out now. We've told people.
That's it. You've told people you have to do it now.
Yeah. And it was a journey getting there. But yeah, we managed to pull it off in the end. Very close to giving up at one point, but we made it through.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was a whole journey getting there, but we learned a lot along the way, which was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. Now, in terms of like the 12 films, like we're not going to go and list them all here, or maybe we will if you email them to me afterwards. But generally, what would you say was the genre of your films? Like, were they like comedies, dramas, a mix of everything, or just like what seems to be Ottawa's take, Christmas and stab horror movies?
That's a really good question because it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Because like we were making 12 films in 12 months. And so what we really wanted to do was really kind of like expand and elevate our skills. So let's trying different genres. So we did comedy, horror, like a Hallmark style Christmas film. What else did we do, Ben? It was a long year.
Yeah, no, we did a few period pieces. So really got into like kind of that 1930s noir style. We did kind of what I call the 1930s trilogy, where like we did three different noir-ish films, and it kind of got more noir on each one. But ultimately, they aren't actually a trilogy because the plots don't connect at all. It's just that was probably the genre we went back to the most.
Okay.
But ultimately, yeah, no, they're all such a diversity of genres. I think one thing that we've found from watching all the films together is like, it's like if you don't like something in 5 minutes, there's going to be something else on completely different. But yeah, we did everything from like somber genre down to like full-blown sitcom comedy, and we had a horror,
like some mumblecore in there. Yeah.
That's excellent. So I guess the next question is, out of the movies that you did make, which one is your favorite? And I wish I could mute the other ones because I want to hear what it is from each of you and see if it's the same or not without influencing each other.
Right. Colin, you want to go first?
So my personal favorite is Shadows of Deceit, which is the noir film that we made. And I think it was, number 9. And I think it was just like after making so many films, it was the first film, in my opinion, as the director of photography, where I really kind of went in stride. And I was just like, okay, I know exactly what I'm going for, and did like a really purposeful setup versus earlier in the year. It was just kind of like, oh, we got to get these films done. So I'm just going to try my best, right? But that was the one that I'm like, no, we're going for something very specific. I'm going to like light it this way and do this and do that. And then it ended up having a really good result.
And that is actually one of my least favorite ones to watch, even though I do acknowledge it's very good, because I'm the main actor in it. And it's the one time all year that I was in front of the camera. And yeah, I don't like acting, but it was a very personal script that I wrote. So it was very much like I had to be the one to play it.
All right.
But it was a really good one for me because it's where the most like co-direction happened. And it's like, even though I'm the DOP, I'm also kind of like directing Ben because he's acting, and that's really hard to kind of like do both, especially how Ben's not a professional actor. And we were able to just pull out a really good performance.
Oh, that's great.
And I had to smoke in the movie, and we lit my cigarettes because I could not do it. So
yeah, it was.
Me light a cigarette in the movie, there's like a cut from one angle where I flick the lighter to another angle where it's lit because I couldn't actually get it to light.
Yeah, I was the only one there that could actually like light the lighter, which was funny. So it was like I would go up and I'd like light it and I'd be like, okay, go.
Fix it in post.
But
Just light it
my
in post.
But yeah, my favorite is probably movie number 11,
Okay.
which is called Cassandra, which is basically it's a coming of age kind of drama, bit of a take on a mumblecore film, but it's an idea that's kind of been living in my head for about 4 years.
Mhm.
So 4 years ago, I was a camp counselor at a summer camp for people with disabilities,
Okay.
and I kind of really got to explore that world and realize like how inauthentically it's been portrayed on screen in the past. So that was kind of my opportunity to put like the real world of that on screen. And our lead actor actually has autism, and we wanted to portray that really authentically.
Mhm.
So that was kind of the goal with that one, and I think we really succeeded. A lot of people came up to me after seeing it and talked about how authentic they felt it was, and yeah, that's why that's my favorite. I think because it lived in my head for the longest, and because it's kind of my baby. But also, I think we really executed it really strongly, and as well, that's actually that same concept is what I'm working on developing for my first feature film, which we're planning to shoot later this year.
And that was gonna be my second question. Were there any of these that you were planning on maybe expanding into a feature film? But you literally just answered that. So, um,
Yeah,
in
well, we worked with a couple of guest directors as well
okay.
who we helped them kind of make their proof of concept.
Mhm.
Where so there's about three of them that are kind of going to potentially be something more
Okay.
one day. But basically, yeah, it was the three guest directors we worked with. All of them, theirs was a proof of concept, and then we did one proof of concept, and then 8 other shorts that are just shorts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit of a technical nerd, so I'm gonna ask Colin because he's the DOP. From my understanding of this, what cameras did you use to film this? And after filming 12 short films, did you make any changes to your technical gear so that if you were to do film number 13, is there like something you would change? I know it's a big question, but feel free to talk for the next 20 minutes.
So that's an extremely good question for a very funny reason. So going into this challenge of doing 12 films in 12 months, Ben's like, we should try to shoot on a different camera every film or some iteration of the setup or something like
Yeah.
that. So for the first like 8, we did a pretty good job. We did kind of like skirt the rules a little bit where it's like, oh, we used 2 of the same cameras, like a Black Magic Pocket. Dual cam setup versus another film we did that just single cam setup, and like how that workflow's different.
It was
Really
a different version of the Pocket also.
okay, that's true.
We
There
had
was also some iterations on that
yeah,
because there was the 4K, the 6K
and the 6K
Pro,
Pro, yeah.
yeah, and
Oh,
then like we shot one on like my personal camera, which is a Sony A7 III, and then we shot a couple of them on the
Canon C100.
yeah, we did that. Both versions, Mark 1 and Mark 2.
Mhm.
So we counted
Um,
those as separate cameras, even though they're
That's fair.
very similar ultimately. Because
so the one thing that we realized really quickly, it's really hard to shoot on like a unique set of cameras per film, especially if there's 12.
Yeah.
And then we shot an Ursa, like a Blackmagic Ursa for one of them, which was really nice. Ben did that in Thunder Bay. But it was just like we were considering things like we were going to shoot on tape in standard definition on a like a DVX 100.
which,
So that was one that we were considering.
like, we'll shoot something on it one day. We didn't end up doing one of the 12 on it, but
Yeah.
we
So
are
it's like
tape, which is cool.
the biggest thing in making 12 films in 12 months, it's like you only have a month per film.
Mhm.
So it's like you're like, okay, let's shoot something at a roller rink. But then maybe the location falls out. And then you're like, okay, so it's like we can't force ourselves to make a movie,
Mhm.
but we have to get a movie done. You know what I mean? And so a movie kind of got crafted out of that, which happened to be like Shadows of Deceit, which was really funny.
Mhm.
Because I'm just like, we should do noir. And I'm like, here's a lookbook. And Ben's like, I'm going to write a script about it. And then it just ended up forming.
Yeah.
But back to the technical question. Like we were considering on shooting like that, like doing like the Magic Lantern hack on like Canon cameras and some other stuff.
Okay.
But ultimately, every camera performs a little bit differently. Each one has like their own little like niches and things that they're extra good at. Like if like my A7 III is really good at low light.
Mhm.
Also depending on the glass that we have access to, because each one of the mounts is like a different mount.
Yeah.
So either we're borrowing glass or renting glass. But kind of getting towards the end of it, I would say after movie 8, we kind of started to realize that this kind of like camera challenge was kind of getting a little bit too ridiculous. So what we wanted to do, because we're going to be doing Ben's feature this year, is we wanted to kind of figure out, okay, we know what camera we're going to be shooting on. And that was kind of part of the challenge, is what camera are we going to shoot Ben's feature on,
Mhm.
right? And that was just a really good way of testing it. So we landed on the Panasonic S1H.
Okay.
So then it was a matter of like, for the glass that we have access to, what is the glass that has the best look for what we want for Cassandra the feature?
Mhm.
And so we used Canon FDs, like vintage glass. We used some Sigma glass.
Yeah.
What was the other glass
The
bag?
Minoltas.
The Minoltas, which we used on Shadows of Deceit,
I
which
still
is some
really like those.
photography
I think,
glass.
yeah.
I picked them up from a Value Village, but it's just like really classically sharp, but still kind of soft.
Mhm.
And it just really kind of helped pull out that kind of vintage feel in that specific film. I talked about Shadows of Deceit a lot, but again, it was the one that I feel like had the most kind of technical purpose to it.
Mhm.
Instead of just getting the film done, I'm just like, I know what I need here, and then we
Yeah.
crafted it from that.
I think now we're leaning really towards the FDs.
Probably.
Yeah, I think that's what we feel.
They're vintage, they're high quality, they're
Yeah.
reasonably cheap, like if you're going to pick them up, and also a lot of people seem to have them.
Mhm.
But I have 2 sets that have been cine modded, and we use that on the Cassandra short, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on film number 2 as well.
Yes, Truth in Journalism.
Yeah.
Which is another funny thing, because it's that we have 2 films with the same glass, but they're shot on 2 different cameras,
Mhm.
and it's just they look different, you know?
Yeah.
But
And
also there's some purpose
movie
there.
2 and movie 11. So we'd gotten so much better by movie 11
Mhm.
that
This is
like
true.
there is just such a massive difference in visual quality between the 2 films, even though it's the same glass.
This is one of the things, you know how like practice makes perfect,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's just like grinding out 12 films. It's just, we got so much better. And everybody we kept showing the films to, being at screenings or Digi60 or whatever, people were just like, you're getting really good at this. Like, this is significantly better from what you're showing me before. And it's just like, I feel like that's a really good thing for all filmmakers. If you want to just improve, is just make movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Practice makes perfect, and especially with the, like, I know when I started this, some of my movies are really bad, and then I just did every 72-hour challenge, the Digi 60, you name it. I kind of did it, and then I'm like looking at my videos and going, oh, they're still pretty terrible, but they're a lot better than they used to be. So, you guys have set on the you said the Panasonic S1H. Now, that's L mount glass, because I'm currently interviewing you on a Panasonic camera, so I'm kind of half experienced with this stuff. What made you pick it over the multitude of other cameras, which sounded a lot like Blackmagic and Canons?
Yeah, I think the principal thing is I think it was the right balance of features of the cameras we already owned.
Okay.
I think we found the most practical camera far and away was probably the C100,
Right.
because it's just built like a tank, but it's of course the 1080p camera.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
it's got great ergonomics, but it does
but
have
it's got
technical
some
limitations.
technical limitations, and the Blackmagic cameras we found like had the best, um, you know, like technical specs. But the problem was that, well, first off, dealing with raw video is like a bit of a headache in terms of just the files get so big.
Mhm.
So we shot some films, and we shot one of the films we shot on Blackmagic in ProRes, and we shot the other 2 in RAW.
Mhm.
And RAW every time was like, oh my god, we have to deal with all these files. Like, imagine shooting a whole feature and having this file size, right? So we found the S1H in a nice like, compromise in between that. The other component is it's the only camera we have that's Netflix approved,
Okay.
and I think that that has some benefits. Like, it has time code, which we're hoping to implement on the feature. and I think it's just a bit more suited to that production workflow. Beyond all that, I think we just liked the image best.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the sensor really stands out, and of the cameras we own, I think it's the best one.
Okay.
That's what it came down to.
Yeah, I feel like out of shooting so many different brands of cameras, what we both found, it's just it had the most. I'm resistant to use this phrasing, but cinematic quality.
I knew he was gonna say
Um,
it.
yeah. But honestly, it's just when we shot things on it, maybe we just got better because it was one of the better cameras that we used later on in the project. It just had a great quality and it had a set of features that really helped us make better pictures, which was really
Mhm.
nice. Even like if we had to do a handheld shot, it was really good IBIS built in,
Mhm.
and that was really nice. Of course, there's limitations,
Yeah.
but just as a tool set to take advantage of, it was really
Mhm.
nice.
Oh, that's good.
And then another benefit was just that it's full frame, and so we could do both full frame and Super 35, so we could put any lens we
Yes.
wanted onto it.
Mhm.
And unlike a lot of the Sony cameras, when you go to Super 35 on the S1H, you still can shoot in 4K.
Yeah.
Whereas I know a lot of the Sony cameras, they go down to HD when you do that.
Yeah, they drop to HD or they have their clear zoom, which scales it up a bit, but your Mare, I think, goes out to lunch if you
Mhm.
have any of that in there because it's kind of trying to
That actually is
fake
a
its way through.
component of the image that we were finding we really liked on the S1H is it has an
Yeah.
optical low pass filter,
Uh,
so the Mauer is basically
yeah,
non-existent.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. We had no moire issues even when cropping into the sensor,
mhm,
Mhm.
and so that was really good. But like even like the C100 had moire issues.
mhm,
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh, that's good. So now that you guys sort of, I guess, picked a camera, you kind of talk about your Canon FD lenses as sort of where you're potentially going to go with in terms of the optics. Um, is there anything else that this 12 month, 12 film sort of thing has taught you beside the technical that, in terms of like being able to make those films that you'll be able to take to a feature film and say, yeah, we've learned how to do this so we don't make those mistakes. And by those mistakes, every mistake I made when I made my feature film, which was numerous.
I feel like for me, like just stepping away from like the technical side, even though really that's where I shine.
Mhm.
I feel like making 12 films in 12 months really kind of helped give self confidence in just making movies in general because there's a lot of self doubt when you're making any sort of creative project. But when you force yourself to just pump out these films and do your best and make the best art that you can make, it's that at the beginning of the year I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like do my best, like maybe it's just not going to be the best film out there, whatever. But once you're like, okay, film 2, 3, 4, 5, eventually you just kind of get this sense of I know how to make movies. Maybe it's not the best way to make movies, but you gain the sense of confidence that it's like no matter what, I will be able to get some sort of baseline.
Mhm.
And then having that sort of self confidence is just really great because then you're like, okay, I actually kind of feel like I know what I'm doing. And it's not just because people are telling me, like, oh, my films are good or whatever. It's that you have a sort of a sense of self satisfaction from just the process of crafting these films that you're like, okay, I can do something else. And then after making 12 films, what once maybe I was thinking, oh, I don't know if I can shoot a feature film, is now it's like, okay, I can shoot a feature film. It's just a matter of just getting out there and doing it.
Mhm. And what about you, Ben?
Yeah, I think my biggest learning experience, like I think I learned a lot about directing and working with actors and directing camera too. But ultimately, I think what I learned even more about was producing. I think that's where my skills kind of grew the most. I think I kind of put myself in the position where I like took distribution and financing out of the equation. I said, I'm going to pay for all these with my own money. Um, and I paid everyone, which was in itself, I think, a really good learning experience because I kind of learned where I need to spend money and where I don't. And, how many crew can I afford to have and how do I make all that work with the budget that I have?
Mhm.
Um, but it took financing out of the equation because I know a lot of filmmakers get hung up on financing, kind of stuck in that area of like, where do I even get money? Where do I look for money? And it was like, no, I'm just going to figure it out with my own money for now.
Mhm.
Which I am privileged to be able to do.
Yep.
But then there was also the distribution component. Taking that out meant like instead of spending time like wondering what we're going to do with this one film, what festivals are we going to send it to? We just popped it into Kino every month. if there was a convenient additional festival, we did a couple additional screenings with some of them.
Mhm.
But that was kind of taking all that out. I really got to focus in on the actual producing of the film, and just like, how do we make it happen every month? Because there was no time to miss deadlines. And so basically, I think I got really good at, well, we can't make this film this month, let's make something else. And kind of just making a schedule that worked, and knowing when to stay on the plan and when to throw away the plan, I think was another component. Because I had previously like tried to be very meticulous with like planning out my shots, and then on these films we really didn't have time. We had to just like make shots,
Mhm.
and so we figured it
Yeah, that's good.
out. And that was, I think, my learning experience, was just how to be a better producer and make more things.
Awesome. So another question is, like, I know I have you two, and you guys were basically helping each other to do this. Is there anyone else you want to say thank you to this that really helped you with all these films, or kind of maybe showed up and gave you cookies or something? I don't know.
There's a lot of thank yous, that I owe a lot of people, for sure. It was definitely like a big favor pull. I think some key highlights. My roommate David really helped out a lot. He's an actor and writer, so he wrote, I think, 3 of them. He acted in, I think, 5 of them, and just was always there and happy to help, which was really good. Um, I think, I really want to thank my parents for letting me film at their house twice, which was really, really helpful. But like, honestly, all the actors, guest directors, writers, everyone we worked with all year was like, helped carry it through so much. Like, I don't think we could have done it without every single person who was credited on it. So, thank you to everyone ultimately.
Awesome. So my next question for you guys is, now that you got this feature film planned out, what is your timeline going forward with this? Is it something we should expect that you're going to be making this year, or is it going to be one of those things where you're going to take a year to sort of prep it up and everything, or is it like you're like we're filming next week?
We're aiming to shoot in May.
Okay.
So my kind of objective is like, hey, one component that like I think had like kind of always boggled the mind for me for making a feature was like, how do we like get 16 days back to back?
Hmm.
On the Hajira frequency, we'd kind of done that, and like that destroyed my like work schedule, and made my life very challenging when I was ADing that. So I kind of learned from doing that film, like, hey, maybe this is not how I want to schedule my feature. So we decided instead to kind of break it up into 4 blocks of 4 days.
Okay.
So in May, June, July, and August, we're each going to shoot 4 days, and that's how we're planning to put it together. And then we'll hop into post after that. I'm hoping to kind of, my goal is to have a festival ready cut by the end of the year. I think there will be kind of some additional sound, like I'm hoping, and color stuff. I think we're hoping to kind of get maybe, a professional sound mix on like a bigger on like a proper mixing facility done, because it's a feature. But obviously that'll take some finagling and some time. So like, I think the first thing is just we want to get a festival ready cut for the end of the year, and then that'll hopefully premiere sometime in the next year. We'll see what festivals we get into and where that goes. But also, we've kind of learned, we have this coming up, but I've been involved in a couple festivals this year. Like, I'm helping bring the 48-hour film challenge to Ottawa with the 48-hour film project global organization,
Okay.
and also I'm working with a variety of organizations on doing the Ottawa Youth Film Festival. So basically, for any filmmakers between the ages of 15 and 21, or 24, 15 to 24. But basically, through doing those, it's kind of like, oh, it's actually not that expensive to just like rent a theater and show our films there. So we're also doing that this year. April 13th, we'll be showing all 12 films.
Awesome.
So we might do a festival premiere, or we might just do our own premiere. But it'll be sometime in 2025, hopefully, if all goes according to plan.
That sounds amazing. And
Yep.
make sure you get the date, April 13th. Where will that be happening?
Yeah, I'll be at the Mayfair Theater,
Yeah.
April 13th in the afternoon. I can give you a link that will have all the info and where to buy tickets and all that.
Yep.
But we'll be,
Link will be
yeah,
below, everybody. Check out the description.
but yeah, we'll be screening all 12 movies, and we'll have a couple trailers as well for a couple friends of ours, films that we want to kind of highlight as well. So, a couple of our friends who've done features, and we'll have all that come together. There'll be also a Q&A with us where you can hear us talk for even longer about our film. Um, we'll get into that. Yeah.
Just take this podcast episode and slap it in there too. Just be like, there you go, just a little extra in case
Yeah,
you need to fill in
it's
the blank.
Q&A. Thanks, Graham. You got one for us.
It's like we thought we'd answer your questions in the audience, but instead, we just listened to what Graham asked.
Yeah.
He hit the record button.
We are doing a couple more podcast appearances.
Oh, that's good.
Between now and then too. We'll be on Andrew Brandon's podcast called Pause It For Me.
Okay.
And we'll be Colin will be going on 1,000 Meals with 1,000 Artists, which is actually hosted by one of our sponsors, Soul One Arts, which is fantastic arts organization that's helping us fund this screening and bring it all together.
Super. That sounds like you guys have your I want to say act together, but like you got all the, you crossed your T's, dot your I's, you got your promotional schedules here and everything. Like, it sounds like you guys really know what you're doing, which is absolutely fantastic. Have you talked to Alan Rolston yet?
No, we're just ultimately we're winging it a little bit too. Right. I think there's a lesson inherent to like the whole process of making and distributing the films too, which is ultimately, I think that you just kind of have to keep doing it. Like, every overnight success has like 10 years of history before it of this person working away at what they're doing. Yeah. There's no real, like, you don't make the first film and suddenly blow up. It's, beyond the 12 Tales and then doing my first feature this year, my actual aim beyond that is I want to do 5 features back to back over the course of 5 years.
Nice.
Because I think having a catalog is ultimately what'll bring you a lot further than having one film.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what about you, Colin? Any plans beyond this feature film?
That's a really good question. I know me and Ben really have this like long-term goal to go to the Oscars, like specifically on the 100th anniversary of the Oscars, which I think is in 2028. So that's kind of something that we'd be like, come on, Oscars 2028, let's go. So I don't know. We both had a really good time working together, making these 12 films. Like, obviously there's challenges, but we surmounted that mountain. And so it's just, let's just do the next project and then the next one.
And one of my goals for the next one is I'm actually like learning financing and distribution properly. I think I like put that out of the way so we could build some skills on the shorts. And now with the feature, I'm going into like really looking for investors, financiers, sponsorships. And then on the opposite end, we're going to be going into, distribution and figuring that out from the ground up as well.
That sounds pretty amazing. So I guess now everyone who's listened this far into the thing is going to want to know, now that you've done this, now you sort of have your forward momentum and everything like this, what would you say to people who have listened to this and are saying, I want to try this? Like, if you had 1 or 2 tips on things to avoid if they were like, I'm going to do this 12 short films in a year, that you'd say, hey, we had a great time, we did it, but we wish we knew.
Don't do it alone. This is only finished because there's 2 of us. I fully believe that. Movie 8, I actually went to Thunder Bay and I shot it myself without Colin, and then he edited it. And that was the movie where I wanted to fucking quit. Sorry, can I swear on here?
I'll let it slide.
Okay. But that was the movie where I really wanted to quit. And ultimately, like, Colin pulled me back out of it. We did the last 4 really as a more synergized effort, but like trying to do it alone, you just can't maintain the momentum because you're not going to be, as a solo shooter, happy enough all the time to carry it through. Like, when one of us got down, the other one could kind of pull us out.
Yeah, I think it's just like a really hard thing to pull off as a solo person. And I know there's lots of YouTubers who have tried this, and funny enough, they've given up around movie 8. So I feel like that's some kind of like pivotal moment, making 12 films in 12 months.
Because I feel like if you do any more than 8, it's like, why would you not finish this?
Yeah.
Like, 8 is kind of your last stop to get off.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. But having somebody to hold you accountable, I think, is like a really big thing. Even if they're not making the movies with you, it's just having that person in your life to just being like, okay, I know you're having a really hard time, but you've made it so far. Just keep going,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also like the realization that not every film has to be like some like award winning, like super amazing film. It's like just make the film that's in your heart.
Yeah.
And then even if you can't make the film that's in your heart, just try to make the best film you can. And sometimes you make something that's really special because you're not trying to make anything super special, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Whatever amount of money you were planned initially to spend on it, double it, because that's what will happen. Just have like double the budget you think you need, because you will need like much more contingency than even a big production needs, because there's just so many small moving parts on these shorts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I feel like a good thing to add is that if you're making 12 films in 12 months, another kind of challenge that we had was we didn't want the same main cast for each film, because
Yeah.
then it would just be the same group of actors. It's that by going out there and trying to pursue different talent in the city, it's just a really good way of building a network. And like both me and Ben, like we knew people, but now we really know people.
Yeah, people know us, which is good too. And I think like another component is like there's this like a saying that like a lot of sets are just like the director and the DP yelling at each other, and then the AD yelling at both of them. And like thankfully, we really had the collaborative environment where we really liked working together, and so I think a lot of people really liked working with us because of that.
That's good.
Yeah, I feel like it was movie 3 where we both realized we were in it to win it. Was that we felt? Do you want to tell the story, Ben? I feel like you tell it better.
So, historically, like I've made a lot of films with like help, but it's always been like kind of, I don't want to say conditional help, and I don't want to disparage anyone who helped me with those. Like I'm very appreciative, but like I've made a lot of films where like I got people's help, but ultimately it was like I had to like really have all the momentum and carry the whole thing forward.
Mhm.
Um, but like movie number 3 that we did together, we had like I had this idea for like basically a comedy about a game of pool, and was like, well, okay, we'll let a pool hall to shoot there. And then we emailed the pool hall and they said, yeah, we can't give it to you for less than $3,000. And I was like, I'm not spending $3,000 just on the location. So I said, hey, crazy idea. What if we just built our own pool hall in a studio? And um, it was like, okay, well, where do we get a pool table? And Colin like looked online and found on Kijiji uh, a broken pool table for like $100, and it happened to be across the street from the studio we were working in.
Nice.
So we did that. We couldn't, like put it in the car. It was too big.
Mhm.
So we walked like a kilometer down the road carrying this pool table, and I realized Colin was helping me do this, and I'm like, oh my god, someone's actually as committed to my films as I am.
Yes.
Because I think that was the lesson I learned when I first really started doing it, was that I almost felt really early on that no one was ever going to be as committed to my movies as I was. And then here's Colin carrying half this pool table, which he really does not want to do. It's made of slate.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
so
I know
heavy.
how heavy they are. Yeah. I was gonna say that's a slate pool
Luckily, we
table.
have legs
That's a
on
lot of commitment.
Yeah,
We were really lucky because it was just the top of a pool table, if that
yeah.
makes any
Legs are all
sense.
broken.
And so like half the weight was gone, but it's
Yeah.
still super heavy,
Yeah.
especially
And then we
between
put
two
the top
people.
on another table, and that's how we made the pool table we used in the movie.
There you go. Some
Yeah, so it
movie magic.
was kind of like fate was on our side. That movie also was the most expensive one, ultimately, because we spent so much time building a bar in a studio.
Mhm.
So I feel like this leads into because you're talking about like what kind of advice would you give?
Mhm.
So when you're a solo indie filmmaker, you're doing all the jobs yourself. I mean, like maybe you're ADing, you're the director, but you're setting up the camera, and then the DP setting up the sound equipment. Which
We did that
happened a
frequently.
lot because I'm a really good sound recorder, so I know how it works. So I had to teach someone how to use the sound kit, and then it's
And
like,
then he
well,
didn't
if
have
I'm
time to
doing
set up the camera because he was training the sound recordist, so I would be setting up the camera.
But movie 3 is a really good example of that. Yes, you can do all the jobs in the world, but there will be a point that what you're trying to make is that, so specifically this film was like set decoration, right?
Mhm.
Is that you can set deck so much on a film by yourself that you'll get to a point that it's preventing you from making the movie. And so we did like this pool table. We walked it down the kilometer down the road. We made this pretty convincing fake pool hall. But the thing is, it's like after the two of us just doing all this set deck, we realized we should have hired help or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Because we were exhausted the entire shoot day.
Yeah,
We
we
didn't
were
have
super
time to plan.
tired.
Yeah. And we barely wrapped the thing in 13 hours, and we had to drop a bunch of things we wanted to do.
Mhm.
And it's just
And
like
I
how
think,
things lined up. It's like we
if I
had to
hadn't
like
spent all
set
that
it up. Oh, sorry,
doing
Ben. I have to talk
sorry.
over you.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, sorry. It's like we had to like set it up like the night before, and then we shot the whole day, and then the next morning we had to take it all down, and like that's just exhausting, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like it actually prevented us from like properly making the movie, at least to the way that we wanted. We still made a good product, but like it was maybe like a shell of what it could have been.
Mm-hmm. And I think the set deck really took out our planning. And like, if I hadn't spent all that time setting up the bar, I might have like realized before we were on set that it really needed to be a 2-day shoot.
Also,
2 10-hour days, and like it would have been way smoother instead of the 1 13-hour day.
Mhm.
Also, I feel like an important thing is that when you're making these 12 films, it's really natural to, you do the first one and, maybe you don't do it that big. But then the next one, you're like, oh, maybe I can go even bigger. And then by the time we got to movie 3, it expanded so much. We had the most set deck, the most actors as like background, and like all this stuff. And it was just like, it almost killed us. It almost killed making 12 films in 12 months, that we had to kind of like realize that we had to scale things back.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it was like basically on the next few films after that, which actually became like some of our very best. Instead of trying to go bigger with each movie, we decided to go deeper with each movie, and tell better stories and more, have more compelling emotional moments. And like I think that actually like really strengthened up those next few films. And that's part of why we were able to get where we were, because we focused on depth instead of size.
Mhm.
Girth. Let's go with girth.
Okay. So I guess the next question is, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to reach out to you, and to maybe like help fund your movie, or be involved in some of the stuff that you mentioned that you're going to be involved with, and basically say, yeah, they want to give you a helping hand or say, good job.
Yeah, my email is info@benbergeron.net. You can also, contact me on Facebook or Instagram, although I tend to be a bit slower to respond there. I tend to do email. It's just easier for me. And yeah, you can also, Colin, you want to?
Oh, yeah. You can reach me at colin.ziraldo@gmail.com. And then you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. My last name's Ziraldo. I'm the only one on the internet, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay, so we're going to make sure that we put those in the description as well, and links and all that good stuff. So if you want to contact them there. I'd like to thank both of you for showing up, even though I was only expecting one person. It's always nice to have more than you bargained. And I wish you the best of luck with your Cassandra 2.0 movie.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
really
you so
excited
much.
to put that together. No, thank you for having us, Graham. Really super appreciate it. Just good warm up for getting on a few more podcasts as we roll out through the month and promoting our film.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys joined me, and I'm happy to help. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. And penciled in April 13th.
Yeah,
April
great.
13th.
Can't wait to see you then.
All right. Thanks very much.